I got to say, you've really got me curious with this whole stack of stuff on APR Industries. We've got annual reports, awards, and a peek into all these industries. Feels like we're about to take a deep dive into their whole story, how they're doing, and maybe even some of the challenges ahead.
Yeah, definitely a wide range with their 7 business verticals, from conductors and cables all the way to specialty oils and even automotive parts. They're really touching a lot of sectors. Makes you wonder how it all comes together.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get too far ahead, maybe let's rewind a bit. APR Industries, they've been around for a while, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Founded all the way back in 1958, celebrating their 65th anniversary, actually, this year. Quite a milestone in the business world. And I think their mission statement is really interesting: to create a world that is more energy efficient, environmentally sustainable, and safer.
Whoa, hold on. That's not just some typical corporate jargon. Energy efficient, environmentally sustainable. Are they actually doing this stuff? Or is this like clever marketing?
That's what we're here to find out, right? But yeah, aligning themselves with this global shift towards sustainability is definitely worth noting. It's not just about keeping things the same. It seems like they're actively trying to be key players in this whole energy transition.
Okay. Color me intrigued. Now, you mentioned 7 business verticals. That's a lot. Can you give us a quick rundown of what they're actually involved in?
Sure, so they have conductors, cable solutions, telecom solutions, specialty oils, specialty automotive, lubricants, and polymers. And these verticals are catering to some pretty major industries: power generation, transmission, automotive, telecom, even defense.
Wow, so they're pretty much everywhere. It sounds like they're in some really dynamic sectors. So let's talk about the landscape of those sectors for a minute. What kind of growth are we looking at in these industries, and how does that play into APR's future?
All right, well, that's where things get really interesting. Take the power sector, for example. India's electricity demand is just growing incredibly fast, and the government is investing heavily in infrastructure to keep up. We're talking something like 6% annual growth projected through 2026, and a $30 billion investment in transmission and distribution over the next decade. That's a huge opportunity for companies like APR that provide the essential components for that infrastructure.
Yeah, they're riding a pretty powerful wave there. What about the automotive industry, though? You mentioned they're involved there too, right?
They are, and it's another sector going through a huge transformation right now. The rise of electric vehicles, especially two-wheelers in the Indian market, is creating a whole new demand for these specialized components and solutions. And it looks like APR is well positioned to capitalize on that with their specialty automotive division.
That makes a lot of sense. Everyone's talking about EVs these days, and India seems like a hotbed for that market.
Yeah.
Now, let's not forget telecom. I mean, everyone's glued to their phones, so that industry must be booming too, right?
Right. You are absolutely right. The global telecom market is enormous. I mean, trillions of dollars. And it's only going to get bigger as demand for faster, more reliable connectivity keeps growing. India, specifically, is expected to have a telecom market worth, let me check my notes here. Oh, yes, USD 210 billion by 2025.
Hmm.
So APR's involvement in that sector with their telecom solutions puts them right in the middle of all of this growth.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to see a pattern here. APR seems to have a knack for choosing these high growth sectors.
Okay.
You mentioned defense too, which feels like a totally different animal. What's their play in that arena?
Well, defense definitely has its own unique dynamics,
Hmm.
but it is another sector with, strong projected growth. The Indian government's push for domestic manufacturing through initiatives like Make in India is driving that defense market towards an estimated value of $54.4 billion by 2033. And APR being in that sector showcases their ability to diversify and adapt to different, industry demands.
Okay, so APR is in some high stakes fields, that's for sure. But let's get down to brass tacks. How are they actually performing in these markets? Let's open up those annual reports and look at the numbers. I am particularly interested in their revenue growth. What's the story there?
Well, if you just look at their conductor business, and remember that's just one of their 7 verticals, they hit a record revenue of 8,031 crores in 2023-24. And here's the interesting thing. They're not just focused on the domestic market. Their domestic export ratio is actually 45.55, showing a strong global presence.
Okay, that's a significant split. It sounds like they're not putting all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. But what does that 45.55 ratio tell us about their strategy? Are they deliberately targeting international markets, or is it more about seizing opportunities as they come up?
That's a great question. It would definitely require a closer look at their, specific market penetration and expansion plans. But it certainly highlights that they're aware of this global landscape and they're willing to, venture beyond their home turf.
Right. Okay. So they're generating some serious revenue, but revenue is only part of the picture, right? Let's talk profitability. What about their EBITDA margins and profit after tax? PAT trends. What can you tell us?
Well, from what I'm seeing, their focus on these high-value products and maintaining cost competitiveness seems to be paying off. Their EBITDA margins and PAT figures are consistently solid, which points to good financial management.
That's good news for investors for sure. But beyond just the numbers, I'm kind of curious about their approach to employee retention. Their annual report mentioned this thing called the Apar, which sounds interesting. What's that all about?
Yeah, that is interesting. Apar Parivar translates to Apar family. It really reflects their emphasis on creating this strong family-like bond within the company. And it's not just talk. They have team members that have been with them for decades, some even crossing the 50-year mark.
Well, that's incredible. Talk about loyalty. You don't see that very often these days. It makes
Mhm.
you wonder if this sense of, belonging actually contributes to their overall success.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor worth considering. A strong company culture can have a huge impact on employee morale, productivity, and, ultimately the bottom line.
Totally. It's a good reminder that a company is more than just its financial statements. Speaking of which, let's turn our attention to their order book. What does that tell us about their future prospects?
Well, their order book is looking healthy and diverse, which is always a good sign. It indicates a strong pipeline of future projects, and it reduces their reliance on any single client or market. And we're not talking small projects here. They've secured some substantial projects, including one in Australia valued at, get this, USD 33 million.
Like impressive. It sounds like they're building a solid foundation for continued growth,
Yeah.
but we can't forget that every company, no matter how successful, faces challenges. What are some of the potential risks APR might run into down the line?
Well, one of the most significant risks they face is the volatility of raw material prices. Aluminum, copper, zinc, these are all essential components for many of their products. And their prices can fluctuate a lot on the global market. And, global inflation and rising interest rates only add to the uncertainty.
Yeah, I can see how that would affect their costs and profitability. Are they just at the mercy of these market forces, though? Or are they taking steps to mitigate the risk?
They're not just sitting back and watching, that's for sure. One of the strategies they use is hedging, which essentially lets them lock in prices for raw materials in advance, protecting themselves from those sudden price spikes. It's a common practice in industries that rely on commodities.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
Yeah.
But what about geopolitical instability? That's a wild card that can really throw things off track.
You're right. Geopolitical events can have these ripple effects across global markets, disrupting supply chains, increasing freight costs, creating uncertainty. And there's really no surefire way to predict or protect yourself completely from those things.
So how are they navigating this unpredictable world? Are they diversifying their sourcing, exploring alternative materials, or maybe strengthening those relationships with key suppliers?
Well, from what I'm seeing, they're focusing on what they can control, optimizing their internal processes, keeping operations lean, and building resilience into their supply chains.
So it's about being agile and proactive, but also understanding that some things are just out of their hands. Now, you mentioned earlier that they face stiff competition in certain segments. Where are those pressure points, and how are they holding up?
So the transformer oils and automotive lubricants segments are particularly competitive. There are some really established players in those markets, and APR needs to constantly innovate and differentiate themselves to stay ahead.
So it's a constant battle for market share. How are they doing in that fight, though? Are they gaining ground, holding steady, or losing traction?
Well, from what I can tell, they seem to be holding their own pretty well. Their focus on high-quality, specialized products, along with their commitment to sustainability, gives them an edge. And, they've built a solid reputation and have these long-term customer relationships.
That's good to hear. It sounds like they're not afraid of a challenge. But amidst all this talk of risks and competition, I'm curious about their long-term vision. Where do they see themselves going in the future? What are their aspirations?
Well, their ambitions are pretty grand. They're aiming for greater global market presence, particularly in light-duty cables, lubricants, and automotive products. They're not just happy with where they are, they're actively looking to expand their reach and influence.
World domination, huh? I like their style.
Yeah.
But expansion can be risky, right? How do they plan to achieve these goals and navigate the challenges of, a global marketplace?
Their strategy seems to hinge on a few key things. First and foremost is innovation. They're constantly investing in research and development, trying to create those cutting-edge products that meet evolving demands.
Yeah, that's essential in any industry, but especially these dynamic sectors that APR's in.
Yeah.
What else is part of their strategic roadmap?
Well, strategic acquisitions are another tool in their belt. Remember when they acquired Uniflex cables back in 2008? That move really helped them expand their cable offerings and solidify their position in the market. So they're not afraid to make bold moves when the opportunity comes up.
Okay, so I'm sensing a theme here. It's like innovation, strategic growth, and a willingness to adapt. But growth isn't just about new products and acquisitions, is it? What about their brand building efforts? How are they connecting with customers and building that loyalty in such a competitive environment?
That's crucial, and it's something they're actively working on. They're engaged in both B2B and B2C brand building. They understand that connecting with customers on an emotional level is just as important as delivering a quality product. And, that APR Paravor concept we discussed earlier, that sense of family and community, it seems to extend beyond their employees and resonate with their customers as well.
It sounds like they're really trying to cultivate this sense of shared values and purpose. But the business world, it's always changing, throwing new curveballs. What are some of these, emerging trends and challenges that APR will need to face in the coming years?
Well, the energy transition is a massive force that's reshaping whole industries. APR is already involved in renewable energy, but they're going to need to stay ahead of the game. Adapt to things like advancements in battery technology, the rise of these distributed energy resources, the increasing demand for smart grids.
So they need to be nimble and forward-thinking. What other trends are on the horizon?
The increasing adoption of digital technologies is huge. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, big data analytics, these are all transforming how businesses operate.
Mhm.
And APR will need to embrace these things to enhance their operations, improve efficiency, and create new value for their customers.
Sounds like a pretty exciting, albeit challenging future ahead. But based on everything we've talked about today, do you think Apar Industries is, ready to handle these complexities and emerge as a leader in the years to come?
I think they have a very solid foundation and a clear vision for the future. They've shown this impressive ability to adapt, to innovate, and stay true to their values. They're definitely a company to watch. But to really get a comprehensive understanding of their potential, we need to take a deeper look at their specific performance across their key product lines.
You're right. Let's zero in on their performance in conductors, specialty oils, and cables. I'm really curious to see how those segments are driving their overall success.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've seen that APR is deeply rooted in some pretty exciting industries, all poised for some serious growth. But let's zoom in a little closer here. You mentioned conductors, specialty oils, and cables, and those seem to be their core areas. I'm curious to learn more about their performance in these specific segments. Let's break it down.
Great idea. We already touched on the conductor business and that record-breaking revenue. But it's interesting that they're not just sticking with traditional conductors. They've actually expanded into more innovative solutions like high-efficiency conductors, or HEC, and high-temperature low-sag conductors, or HTLS.
Oh yeah, those were those technologies winning all the awards. So they're not just keeping up with the industry, they're pushing the boundaries. I'm curious though, what makes these HEC and HTLS conductors so special?
Well, think of it this way. These conductors are designed to transmit electricity with more efficiency and less energy loss. So HEC conductors, for example, they can actually carry more current for the same cross-sectional area, which means you can transmit more power with less material. And HTLS conductors can operate at higher temperatures without sagging, making them ideal for those long-distance transmission lines.
So they're not just making small tweaks, they're rethinking the fundamentals of electricity transmission. That's pretty impressive. Now, what about the specialty oils? What's happening there?
That's another area where APR is making waves. Did you know they're actually India's largest private manufacturer and exporter of specialty oils? They have a whopping 60% market share in power transformers in India. And get this, they're the world's third largest transformer oil manufacturer.
Wow. Okay, those numbers definitely speak for themselves. They are a dominant force in that market. What are they doing that's setting them apart from the competition? Is it just about scale, or is there something more?
Well, scale definitely plays a role, but it's their constant focus on innovation that's really driving their success in this segment. They're always developing these new and improved products to meet the changing needs of the industry. One example is their K-class fire safety biodegradable transformer oil.
Okay, now that sounds interesting. What's so special about this oil? Is it just about safety, or are there environmental benefits as well?
It's both, actually. The oil is not only fire resistant, which is, obviously crucial for transformers, but it's also biodegradable. So that means it has a much lower environmental impact than traditional transformer oils.
Okay, so they're tackling both performance and sustainability concerns. That's a smart move.
Yeah.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about cables. They won that Technology of the Year award for their cable division, right?
Yeah.
What makes their cables stand out?
They did, and it really shows the breadth of their cable portfolio. They offer a really diverse range of cable products serving all sorts of market segments and regions. They even developed this branded gigavolt hybrid cable specifically designed for the huge demands of 5G technology.
Wow, so they're really thinking ahead. It's great to see how they're incorporating sustainability into their product development across the board. The eco-friendly lubricants, the biodegradable transformer oils, and now these high-efficiency conductors that reduce energy loss. It seems like they're really putting their money where your mouth is.
I agree. Their actions really match their mission to create a more sustainable world. And it's not just limited to their products either. Remember their donation to that DDMM Heart Institute for installing solar panels? That shows a broader commitment to, environmental responsibility.
Right? It's not just checking boxes. It's about integrating sustainable practices into everything they do. Now, you mentioned before that APR faces some risks, especially when it comes to those fluctuating raw material prices. Let's dig into that a little more. What are some of the specific challenges they're facing, and how are they addressing them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the fluctuation in prices of key metals. Aluminum, copper, zinc, these are all essential components for many of their products. And global inflation and rising interest rates are just adding more pressure to their margins.
Yeah, I can imagine that keeps their finance team busy. Are they at the mercy of the market, though, or are they taking steps to manage those fluctuations?
Oh, they're definitely not sitting still. They use a hedging strategy to try to minimize the impact of those price swings. That means securing contracts to buy those raw materials at a set price, even if market prices change.
So it's like a buffer to protect them from those sudden price hikes. They could really cut into their profits. That's smart. But what about something like geopolitical instability? That's a wild card that could be hard to predict.
Absolutely. It's a big concern for APR, as it is for any global company. Disrupted supply chains, higher freight costs, and that overall market uncertainty, those are all possible consequences of geopolitical events.
So how are they dealing with this unpredictable landscape? Are they diversifying their sourcing, exploring alternative materials, or even moving production to other regions?
Well, based on what we have, their main focus seems to be on what they can control, optimizing those internal processes, keeping things lean, and building that resilience into their supply chains. They're also working on strengthening those relationships with key suppliers to ensure a steady supply of materials.
So it's all about adaptability and being proactive, mitigating risks where they can, but also understanding that some things are out of their control. Now, you mentioned earlier that they face tough competition in certain areas. Where are those pressure points most noticeable, and how are they handling it?
The transformer oils and automotive lubricants segments are particularly competitive. They're going up against some big players in those markets, and it's a constant fight for market share.
So how are they differentiating themselves in these really crowded markets? Is it all about price, or are they playing to their strengths?
They're not just trying to be the cheapest option. Their strategy is about high-quality, specialized products, and they're using their commitment to sustainability as a key differentiator.
That makes sense. Consumers are becoming more and more environmentally conscious, so companies that align with those values definitely have an advantage. But what else are they doing to stay ahead of the game? Are they investing heavily in marketing, building up strong distribution networks, or focusing on niche markets?
Well, they're certainly not neglecting their branding. They're actively engaging with both, businesses and consumers. They realize that building those strong relationships and loyalty is crucial in this competitive environment. They're also using their long-standing reputation and their established network of customers to maintain that, strong foothold in the market.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Product quality, sustainability, strong branding, and leveraging those existing relationships. It sounds like a solid strategy. But let's step back from the competition for a moment and talk about their overall vision for the future. Where do they see themselves headed in the long run?
Their goals are pretty ambitious. They're aiming for a much larger global presence, especially in areas like light-duty cables, lubricants, and those automotive products. They're not content with just maintaining their position. They want to expand their reach and become a truly global player in their sectors.
That's a bold goal. Expansion can be risky, especially when you're moving into unfamiliar territory. How are they planning to achieve these goals while navigating the challenges of international expansion?
Their strategy really relies on a few key things. Innovation is at the top of the list. They're constantly putting money into research and development to create those cutting-edge products that, meet the changing needs of the market and keep them ahead of the competition.
So it's not just about following trends, it's about setting them. But innovation alone isn't always enough, right? What other strategic moves are they making to achieve these growth targets?
Strategic acquisitions are another important part of their strategy. They've shown they're willing to make big moves, like their acquisition of Uniflex cables. That really helped them broaden their offerings and strengthen their position. And they're also looking into joint ventures and partnerships to enter new markets and tap into local expertise.
That's a smart move. It's not always about doing everything yourself. Sometimes teaming up can be a much faster and more efficient way to grow. But expansion isn't just about market reach and products. What about their internal capabilities? Are they investing in their workforce, building up their leadership, and fostering a culture that supports innovation and agility?
Definitely. They know that their people are their most valuable asset. They're actively fostering a culture of learning and development, giving their employees opportunities to grow and contribute to the company's success. And they're also committed to building a diverse and inclusive workplace because they understand that different perspectives and experiences are essential for innovation and growth.
That's fantastic. It sounds like they're taking a really holistic approach to growth, looking at both those external factors like market expansion and product development, but also internal capabilities and that, cultural alignment.
Exactly. They seem to get that sustainable growth requires a balance of both. But we can't forget that the business world is constantly evolving. New challenges and opportunities are always popping up. What are some of those key trends that APR will need to navigate in the coming years?
Well, the energy transition is a huge factor that's reshaping whole industries. APR is already in the renewable energy space, but they'll need to stay ahead of the game. They'll need to adapt to things like advances in battery technology, the growth of these distributed energy resources, and the increasing need for those smart grids. What else is on the horizon?
Well, the increasing adoption of digital technologies is another major trend. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, big data analytics, these are all changing how businesses operate, creating both opportunities and challenges. APR is going to have to embrace these things to improve their operations, become more efficient, and create more value for their customers.
It sounds like there's a really exciting but also demanding future ahead of them. But considering everything we've discussed today, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think APR Industries is equipped to handle these complexities and come out on top in the years to come?
I do think they have a strong foundation and a clear vision for the future. They've consistently shown that they can adapt, innovate, and stay true to their values. But to really gauge their long-term potential, we need to look closer at one really important aspect, their commitment to social responsibility.
That's a great point. Their CSR initiatives really caught my attention earlier. Let's switch gears and focus on those efforts and explore the impact they're having beyond the world of business. We spent a lot of time digging into APR's financials, their strategy, and their position in all these fast-moving industries.
We have, and it's obvious that they're not afraid to push boundaries, really innovate and adapt, especially in this constantly changing business world.
Absolutely. But sometimes with all the numbers and market analysis, we forget that a company's real impact goes beyond just profit.
Right, I totally agree. And with APR, their commitment to social responsibility seems to be a core part of how they operate.
Yeah, their whole Paravar philosophy, that emphasis on family, it shows they're not just about shareholder value, they're about building a community, both inside and outside the company.
Exactly. And their CSR initiatives are a real, tangible way they're showing that commitment. They're involved in healthcare, rural development, education, gender equality. It's pretty impressive.
Let's go back to those initiatives for a second and really explore the impact they're having. We talked about their support for healthcare, education, and the environment, but I'd love to get into the specifics. What are some of the actual outcomes of their projects?
Well, their contribution to Dr. N.D. Desai Faculty of Medical Science and Research is a great example. It's this really advanced teaching hospital that provides free treatment to people in lower-income communities. It's a lifeline for those who might not have access to good healthcare otherwise.
That's really something.
Yeah.
They're not just giving money, they're actively involved in improving people's lives. What about their work with the Govardhan Skills Center? How are they empowering tribal communities?
So the Govardhan Skills Center focuses on giving vocational training to tribal women, children, and youth. They have courses in lots of different fields, giving them the skills to get jobs and, break free from poverty. The impact is huge. It helps these individuals build a better future.
It's amazing how they're investing in people,
Mhm.
creating this ripple effect of positive change. And their commitment to environmental sustainability is also really great to see. We mentioned their donation to the DDMM Heart Institute for solar panels, but what other things are they doing in this area?
They've implemented all sorts of sustainable practices across their operations, from using energy-efficient manufacturing to reducing waste. They're taking steps to minimize their environmental impact.
It's encouraging to see a company that's not only successful, but also being a responsible corporate citizen. It says a lot about their values and their vision for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Their actions really show a genuine desire to make things better, not just for themselves, but for everyone.
Well, everyone, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone through APR's incredible journey from their early days to their position as a leader in so many industries. We've looked at their financials, their strategy, and their commitment to sustainability and social responsibility. I hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into this remarkable company.
It's been a fascinating exploration, and I think Apar Industries is a company worth watching. They're not just keeping up with change, they're shaping the future. They've got this innovative spirit and strong values.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with something to think about. Knowing what we know now about Apar Industries, how do you think they'll continue to navigate this ever-changing world while staying true to their mission of creating a more sustainable and equitable world?
That's a great question. And I'm confident that APR, with their leadership and their team, will continue to make a positive impact for many years to come.
Until next time, keep diving deep.